Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Magdalene Interview Series. I'm so excited today to bring this conversation to you. We're looking at what happens when your spirituality tells you that everything is one, but the world you're living in clearly isn't behaving as if that is the reality. And I have with me today Kimberly Cintio, who, holy moly, has written 5 books. Is this right? Do I have the number right? 5 books, channeling and speaking about Mary Magdalene, as well as a huge body of work, which you can find at the link in the description on her website, of transmissions and teachings and leaning into Mary Magdalene. So I'm so excited to have you with us on the show today, Kimberly. And before we dive in, and we'll ask you to introduce yourself to us and fill in the gaps where I may have left anything out, I just want to name that this interview series is being held also in partnership with the Magdalene Pleasure Pilgrimage, Your Wild Roots, which I'm hosting in the south of France in September. And I wanted to create this interview series so that people could get a sense for how I intend to hold space there in France, because it's one thing to go on a retreat or to go to a conference or to go learn some kind of modality. And that is not what this is. This is a space for each of us to show up with our healing codes, with our inner wisdom, and with the vast body of work that we steward and carry, and be celebrated one with another in sisterhood. And so if you're interested at all in that, please do reach out to me. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce Kimberly Cintio. Will you tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you've done?
Sure, thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to have this time with you and with everyone today. I am an author and a speaker. I'm also an intuitive medium. I am a trance and a conscious channel. And when I say conscious channel, that means when I am speaking to you, the higher beings of light come through and they speak through me to you. And a lot of times when it happens, it really catches me off. I'm very surprised. I'm like, oh, yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm also a medical intuitive, and I work with the diamond light. Now, the diamond light is a very high frequency light that is part of that new light that's coming to the planet right now. When I do private sessions or when I do big group healings, everybody receives, but everybody receives differently. Your soul will direct the light where it needs to go. And often when I'm sending the light, I can see through all time and space. I'm a clairvoyant channel, so I watch the spirit beings actually come in and do the work. It's really, really very profound and very powerful. I'm also an animal communicator. And everything that I do with humans, I do with animals. I also do with the trees. I also do everything that has consciousness, I communicate with. As a matter of fact, right now they're cutting down a tree across the street from my house, and I feel a lot of sadness in my heart. But I was told this morning through my guides that the soul of the tree left last night. So the tree already knows it's gone, and it's going to be a tree in the new earth. So a lot of the animals and a lot of the trees that are being cut down, it's a conscious choice. They're choosing to go to start their new lives in the new earth. I teach a lot of classes. I help people. I'm like an ascension activator. I also help people to find their true selves, to learn who they are, because when we all came incarnated in this life, during this time, our memories were erased, and I help people to grow and to learn and to step in their fullness, their full self, to be in alignment with who they are, and to start walking that path of love. And a lot of the Magdalene sisters come to me because I bring in the Magdalene and guide them where they need to go, and help them to learn who they are. Who were you in a past life?
Wow, that's so such a vast body of work. And I loved you kind of paying this honor to the tree across the street. Like I think that those of us who feel the connection to the land, it's such a powerful stewardship. And so I just want to thank you for holding that as well in your field and being in relation with our beautiful Mother Earth. It's interesting. I actually want to ask the first question I want to ask, and I'm curious for those who are watching, if you want to share in the comments with us, like if you've experienced this before too. But I've had friends around me who are channels, and at times I've had people just kind of step all over me, like tell me who I am and tell me, it's like, well, I'm intuitive, so let me just tell you everything about you and who you are. I'd love to hear how you work with consent around knowing stuff, because I'm also intuitive, and I have found that I have had to create some filters for myself. And sometimes it's painful, like bite your tongue and, but like, what is that like for you when you're, stepping into that relationship with somebody to like bring some information that you're seeing or giving?
Well, first of all, I don't do anything without getting permission first. When somebody comes to me and they're paying for a session, they're giving me the permission to read their energy. And that's what I do is I read energy and then I share the information I'm receiving. I also give them the opportunity to ask questions after I channel a little bit, and then we answer the questions. Now, if I was just speaking to you on the street, I'm not going to sit there and read your energy and tell you stuff. I'm not, not like the Long Island medium that just comes up to you and starts spitting out all this information. I stay quiet until you give me the permission or you ask me a question. Now, if you ask the question, more than likely, I will give you a little bit of information. Yes, but I always have to get permission. Now, if the soul isn't present and they need, and say somebody, Sally comes to me and she says her husband really needs my help, but he'll never agree to this. What I'll do is I get permission from their higher self, the higher part of the soul, which is the one that you were speaking about earlier, and get permission from the higher self. Sometimes most of the time, the higher selves are on board, but I've had them when they're like, who are you? And why do you want to know? And I'm like, he's not going to give me permission. And then I'll either, they walk away or they'll talk to them. Let me have him come talk to you in his 3D self, not in his higher self.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
so
very
beautiful.
important to get permission.
I love that. Thanks for speaking to that. The other side that I see is, when you have someone like yourself who's so connected into all of these things that maybe many other people can't see, like, how do you support your clients to not like build a dependence, but like to build their own internal, intuition and gifts and like ultimately be able to stand on their own feet?
I usually tell them I teach them different tools. I give them tools and different ways of how they can do it on their own. Like I also do mentorship, personal mentorship. I just had a client this morning and I'm teaching her how to connect with spirit. So she can do it on her own. I'm here for the support. I'm here if you have questions. If you get into trouble, I can help you too. I have a lot of experience. I've been an intuitive my entire life, but I've been awakened over 20 years. I've been doing this kind of work. So I'm the mentor, so to speak. So they, I give you the tools, you connect. I always advise people, they think that, and I have seen this across the internet, where they offer like, well, come meet your spirit guides for free, join this podcast. So I personally don't recommend that, because you're doing a meditation. You don't know who you're bringing in if you're brand new. If you're brand new at this, you don't know who you're bringing in. There's all kinds of trickster spirits. There's spirits that can just drop in and say they're Mary Magdalene, but they're not Mary Magdalene, that type of thing. And when I work one-on-one personally with somebody, I see the guides come in. I see them come in because it's in a structured learning experience.
Yeah. So container matters is what I'm hearing you say. I love that. And I also heard this analogy as you were talking. It's the whole, like, they're hungry. Give them the fishing pole, give them the tools, give them teach them the whole process so that they know how to fish. Because I do see it's like our human nature and it takes some of us our whole lives to grow out of needing somebody else to tell us who we are, and that it is human nature, because when we were born with the need to have someone else tell us, like, or we wouldn't have survived. Like, someone else take care of me, someone else show me the way, our parents, but then as we grow, some of us never quite grow out of that. And it's like outsourcing that authority. So I love to hear how you're working in such a conscious way. It's really beautiful. And I'd love, again, if you're listening in the comments, let us know if you've ever had an experience like that where you felt like somebody was just telling you who you are and how that lands. Because I know for me personally, in the beginning, I was like, oh, thank you, until suddenly I was like, this doesn't feel right. I don't think this is who I am. Like, it had to come from me.
That's true. That's something that Spirit always says in a lot of my channeled work. Always trust what it is you feel. If you don't feel it, then it's not for you. You can just back up, redirect your thoughts, and go another direction. If it doesn't feel right, then it's not resonating with your soul. Your soul is going to let you know. If something resonates with you, you're going to get the thrill bumps, the chill bumps, the goosebumps, whatever you want to call it. That is an indication your soul is in alignment with what it is that you're hearing or what it is that is saying. I've had people in the beginning of my journey tell me stuff. I think back now and I'm like, okay, it was just a learning experience, so to speak. So,
yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I'd like to shift gears a little bit now and speak a little bit more to the one, this soul that transcends identity and culture and background. And I know for me personally, dropping into that place has been such a gift. I am so grateful that I have that awareness and that I walk around on the planet knowing that there's more to life than the walls and barriers and things that we see in front of us. But I'm curious, how do you hold that belief while also staying in relationship with the very real lived experiences of people who don't get to transcend those things in their daily lives? People, I like think immediately of people of color who it's like race is a constant thing in their face. Like, how do you hold both of those worlds and meet people where they're at?
Okay. Well, I personally, when I'm speaking to somebody, I don't see a race. I don't see a culture. I see a soul. I look into their eyes and I speak to their soul. Soul, at each incarnation that you come into, you choose which culture, which race you want to be, because you want to be in and live in, because you have leftover karma that you want to learn. And when you learn these attributes and these lessons, then you become more whole, more in alignment with who you are. So each soul, every living thing has a soul. They just have a different type of body suit. Okay, I'll give myself as an example. I came in as a white woman in this lifetime, but in my most recent past life, I was Native American. And then that past life, I was also Native American. And before that, I was like indigenous, somewhere in the indigenous tribe. I think it was in Peru or something. We have all these different lifetimes, and we're different cultures, different races, just a different way of being. So if you look at every single lifetime that we have, we're living in one parallel lifetime. So say I was an Oriental man in a past life, and I'm doing something in this life that requires the knowledge of that culture. That part of myself, that aspect of myself is going to come forward and work what it is I need to work out now. And that goes for everybody. We've all been male, female. Some of us have been animals. And animals, same thing. An animal is a soul is a soul. It's just a different bodysuit. However, we choose before the incarnation to come in to be, we are. And there's always lessons attached to that. Karmic lessons. Now, I do know that's how it is right now, but as we are moving to the new earth, there will be no more karma. That's all the old paradigm. That's all behind us. We're moving into a new way of life. That's why everything that's happening right now is happening, because you have to have the turbulence before you can see the pure light. But we have lived so many different lifetimes, so many different cultures, so many different races. So when you ask me a question like this, I'll look in the eyes of the person and speak to the soul.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious too, like for those of you who are listening, put in the comments if you're comfortable. Do you tend to think of spirituality as something that's beyond identity and culture, or something that needs to include it? I know on my own journey, until I started listening to the stories of people of color, I recognized I was not actually creating inclusive spaces or really being inclusive, because I wasn't recognizing that for them, race is a big part of their everyday. And because I'm white and because I'm born with privilege in this iteration or whatever that is, right? That like it behooves me to know what the experiences are like for people of color. And so I'd love to hear in the chat how that lands for you. And then I think when we talk about spirituality, when your work isn't necessarily rooted in a specific lineage, what does responsibility look like for you? Like, how do you make sure you're not unintentionally bypassing or speaking over traditions that come from specific cultures and histories?
I just go by how I feel. If I'm in a conversation that's starting to feel a little uncomfortable, I back off and I just allow the person to speak. I just listen. Sometimes it's best to not say anything and just allow that person to share what they want to share through their heart and through their own soul.
I really love that. I think that wasn't something that had ever been taught to me until I started living it, that listening is a spiritual practice. Just listening. And I run a publishing company, right? So I'm in the role of helping support people to tell their stories. So it's like it matters when we take the time to listen. I think we're in such a fast-paced environment, everything is go, go, go. And I often have people say to me, you run a publishing company, who has the time to read? Like, who's actually, taking that time to listen to people's voices and stories and things. And I just find so much value when we sit and listen. I learn something every time. So I really appreciate you, speaking to the listen aspect. We also know Mary Magdalene herself lived at a crossroads of multiple cultures and traditions, and stewarded traditions from multiple cultures. And we don't really for sure know historically which traditions came from her lineage, which traditions did she just get to step into, or be initiated into. And I wonder, like, if she were alive today, moving between those worlds, how do you think she would approach right relationship and reciprocity with the cultures that she was connected to? Like, it was a different time back then. But if she was, because this is our question today, how are we stewarding this, and how are we creating right relation and reciprocity?
I think she did exactly that. She read the energy. She stepped back when she needed to step back, but she also had a mission. and she was receiving information. She was a channel as well. Yeshua and Mary Magdalene were both channels. And that's why when they went to the mound, they didn't have a rehearsed script. They just started sharing information because they were channeling the information. I feel as if she was guided to go where she went to assist people on their journey to speak more of this new way of life, similar to what we all are doing now. All the light workers are doing now, helping other people to remember who they are so they can be the same and live the same. She did the same thing. Many people followed her, but then there were other people that didn't, because it was a patriarchal society and women didn't really have a place. Women didn't have a place to talk, but she was very, very strong-willed, and she just did it anyway. When I went to France, I went to France twice. I was called to go in 2018, and then I went back again in 2019. And I walked in her footsteps, and there were places that we went that she came through me and relived the experience. I was like, well, what was that? Sometimes I was shaking, sometimes I was crying. And a lot of this stuff that happened to me when I was there is not documented in history, but she wanted to come through me to relive it. May I share one particular time that I know a lot of people are not aware of? I was in what was the name of that place? I'm sorry, it's like a big blur sometimes. I can't think of it, but it was a church on top of a mountain. And it was near the Mediterranean Sea. And we went to the church, and gosh, it began with an L, Lamu, maybe. Anyway, so I was with a group of women, and we went inside the church, and they were having mass that day. And on top of the mountain, like I said, was a church, and it was very, very windy. I remember just it was hard to walk into the building because the wind was so incredibly strong. And we went inside the church, and it was packed in there because it was a Sunday mass. And I stood in the back of the church because that was the only place you can really stand. Well, I'm a tall woman, I'm 5'10", and I took my camera out and I did a video. And it was just so beautiful, and there's so much beautiful artwork and gold everywhere. And they were doing, they were chanting some beautiful chant. I have it on my phone. It's just a beautiful video. And I'm doing the video, and I stopped and I turned the video off. She comes through. I'm like, I feel this intense energy, and I'm shaking, and I'm just, what the heck is going on? What is going on? And I just like out of it. And the women I were with were like, Kim, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, not really. And she came in that quick and came out. And then I went down the steps. The women I was with was holding me because I was just like kind of like out of body. And I went and I sat down, and I journaled. I wanted to know what exactly happened there. Well, Mary came through, and she told me that she remembers being there, and it was a very sacred time that she was there. She said that she was giving a talk on the bottom of the mountain with a group of people, and they didn't like what she had to say. So they started calling her names, and she was running and running for her life. They were throwing rocks at her, and she was running, and she went up the mountain. And she says at the time, the church wasn't there. It was just the building. And there were some men outside that were very, very kind to her. And they saw that she was upset, and she sat down, and she was like kind of crying, and they were calming her down. They gave her water. They gave her a blanket. They were just like calming her down. So she told me from that experience with me being in the church, it brought back the memory, and she wanted me to experience what she experienced. I mean, it was intense. I mean, if you can feel this energy go and stay in you, and like it was almost like I was standing there, but I couldn't see. And then she popped out. But the experience itself was was I can't even explain it. It was very intense. But she wanted me to experience what she experienced because she was fearful for her life.
Wow.
And she came through me there. There were other times where I was looking at the Stations of the Cross in St. Sulpice, and she started crying through me. So she was reliving the experience through me. It's very, very intense. It was a very intense time for women to speak up and speak their truth because of the patriarchal society.
This is the piece that really inspires me about her. There's so much more than what is just located in the New Testament about who she was. And when you think about some of the things that we went through, and we don't have a lot of written, context for it, but like what brought her to France? We do have historical evidence that she was there. Like she was fleeing, what else could have brought her to France? She was fleeing.
Yes.
And some of these elements of like what it must have looked like to go around and teach and things. That's really beautiful what you shared. And then also knowing the intensity of what the Cathars held and how devoutly they held it so many years later it starts to form a picture about what her life must have been like in France. And there's legends that she stayed in a cave for 30 years. I mean, maybe that's where she slept, but I would assume that if an entire group called the Cathars were carrying her teachings, she wasn't just staying there as a hermit and just hiding out there the whole time.
There's so much more to the story. That's only a small portion of the story.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I would love to ask one more question and then we'll wrap up our conversation. You've devoted your life to this work for so many years. And I would love to ask, what has this path required of you that people might not see on the surface?
Like what?
Just this, goodness, your entire life is devoted to the Magdalene. Like what has that been like behind the books and the author and the speaking and everything? What has it required of you? Just whatever you feel to share.
It's like an inner knowing. You just you get these nudges and this feeling and you just do. I always stay present and just do. I know when I was called to go to France, I knew of Mary Magdalene and I knew of Yeshua. I was not raised Christian. So when I went on that trip, the first trip in 2018, Spirit told me, we want you to take as many pictures as you can and just follow our lead. So everywhere we went, I know I'm going to get backlash for this, but everywhere we went and we had a tour guide, the tour guide would speak and I would hear Mary say, that's not how it was at all. It wasn't like that at all. It was like that a little bit, but no. I'll explain it to you later, Kim, when you get back to the room later tonight. So after every day, everywhere we went and the legends were shared, the legends are like, it's someone else's perspective. And then every time the story's told, it changes. It's just similar to like playing the telephone game when you were a child. Every time the story is told, it changes. So she was telling me truth. So when I came back to the room every night, I sat and I channeled. And she would give me information. Now, she wouldn't give me all of it, but she would fill in the blanks of what the tour guide left out. And when I came back from my second trip, because I went in 2018 and then I went back in 2019, they said, okay, You ready to put that book together? We gave you all that information. Will you write my truth? Will you write my story, my book? And I'm like, okay. I said okay, but then when some of the things that were coming out, I was like, you want me to go public with that? Okay, but I did it. I stepped aside, I let her, put what she needed to put. She formatted the book. She picked out the typeface. She picked out the cover, the title, everything. I just kind of put it together and paid for it. I do have a sequel book coming out from this first book, and this book talks about the crucifixion and the sisterhood and the fountain of love and the Cathars. The sequel book picks up where that leaves off. It's going to share her life after the crucifixion and everything that happened up until the day she died. And then all the other information that is left out or that has been misconstrued. It's not been told properly. I'm like, I already got like a lot of the chapters all lined out and written, but I just have to, complete it and it'll get out there when it gets out there. So to answer your question, I live my life with the way I feel. When we complete one assignment, the universe will bring you another. When you complete that assignment, then you get up leveled and upgraded, and then you do another assignment. So right now, they just told me of my new assignment, and I'm really excited to get started. So the more you complete, the more you elevate. They will not elevate you until you pass the test. In other words, well, Spirit puts the elevations in like a grade system. Said if you don't pass kindergarten, you can't go to college. You have to do the work. You have to do the processes, and then you rise up.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us today, Kimberly. And thanks again for those of you who watched with us today. I think that there's been a lot of interesting conversation here and a lot of value in the journey that you've been on and the things that you're teaching and sharing, and appreciate your perspective so much, Kimberly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, please do say hi in the comments, whether you're here live or on the replay, and we will double check those comments even days after we finish this interview. And if you feel called to connect with Kim, you can find all of her information in the description. We've included her website and social media handles and things like that. And I just thank you for sharing your journey and your experience with us. And stay tuned for another episode of the Magdalene Interview Series. Bye for now.
Thank you.